This is the MBA Wire episode 28. If you guys remember back in episode 21, I told you that my favorite movie was Pitch Perfect. So I watched Pitch Perfect 2 just recently, and it was awesome. Yeah. All right, let's hit it.
Inspirational MBA talk with successful alumni to motivate you during your application run. We go behind the scenes of every story, talk business, and show you why it's worthwhile to never give up on your MBA dream. And now, here's your host with the most, Mateo Chang.
What's up, citizens of the Wire? Welcome back to another episode of the MBA Wire. I am so excited to have here with us Vince from VincePrep. Vince Ricci. Is that how you pronounce your last name? Ricci or Ricky?
Ricci, yeah. There was an Italian in my family a long time ago, so that's an Italian name, and that's how you say it. Yep.
Oh, okay. Nice. Ricci. So Vince Ricci, he's an admissions counselor from Tokyo. He's in Tokyo right now, and why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our listeners, Vince?
Thanks, Mateo. Yeah, it's great to be here. You and I met through AGAC, which is the organization of admissions consultants. It's a great group of international friends, and we were just over there in London and Paris, and now I'm back here where I live. My wife's Japanese. I live in Tokyo, and I've been here for, at this point, I just say almost 15 years. I think it's 13 and a half, but I'm not so strict. Anyway, a while, more than a decade doing this work, and I love it. I love helping my clients achieve their dreams. I have clients around the world, actually, but the vast majority are based in Japan, including other expats here, but mostly they're Japanese folks trying to go to school, mostly in the States, sometimes Europe, UK, etc., and sometimes actually increasingly in Asia. But anyway, for the most part, I'm a specialist on U.S. schools, and for the most part, my clients are Japanese trying to get into those top schools.
Nice. Well, welcome, Vince, and thank you for granting us some of your precious time here to do a little interview. You guys, yes, we just came back from the AGAC conference over in Europe. It was amazing. It was awesome. And also, here's just another thing about Vince. He is the president-elect of the Association of International Graduate Admissions Consultants. And
it's funny, right? What does that mean?
I know it's such a long name, and AGAC, but he is the president-elect, which means he is up next, right, for being the president of the association.
Yeah, it'll be after our Boston conference. So I guess around August 2016, I'll take the reins, such as they are. It's a little nonprofit, not a big deal, but yeah, somebody needs to run it, I guess, and nobody else has stepped up, so it's my turn.
Yeah, no, we got to get younger. We got to get younger generations in there and get it pushed out. But Vince, you did a few videos, so that was cool, man. Thanks a lot.
I love it. Yeah, I studied educational technology. Now they changed the name of my program at NYU. Now it's called what is it? Digital Media Design for Learning. It had a long name, but I love technology. I love education. And I have my little YouTube channel, and it's fun. It's a nice way to reach a global audience. And I have an acting background, so it also satisfies my need to perform. I have a kid, so I don't do acting as such, but I love to talk and be seen. So why not make my own channel? That's what I do.
Nice.
just like what you're doing, right? It's kind of fun.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely fun to get out there, get your voice out there. I mean, it's hard nowadays, you have so many outlets of social media, and it's hard to really just kind of, call attention to some of the great things that you're doing. So, I mean, we're always trying to find a medium that can connect with our listeners or viewers or readers as best as possible. I'm not a big writer, so, blogging is not in there for me. I'd rather just, record something and set it out there as a podcast. But it's nice, though. We enjoy what we're doing, right?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. So Vince, last week I interviewed AJ from Beijing, and then this week I'm interviewing you from Tokyo. So we're far Asia.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Asian week.
it's Asia.
It's Asian month.
Yeah, basically, we started off in Europe. Yeah, it was cool, kind of cool because we started off in Paris. Then kind of I shifted over into London, and then now we just jumped way over into Beijing, and then now we're over on the other end of the world here compared to Brazil, in Tokyo. Tell me about, what's it like in Tokyo? I mean, just let's go with what's it like to live there.
Yeah.
Because I have no idea, man. There's no clue. Just give me a picture of your day there.
Well, I mean, so people always talk about, definitely on a macro level. I guess your listeners are kind of MBA types, right? So to just look at it from an economic view, first of all, not that that's how I think necessarily, but people talk about Japan definitely being, having had a pretty soft economy for decades now. But you really don't know that being in Tokyo. Tokyo is pretty vibrant. Somebody once told me that it's been actually I read this in the Lonely Planet. It's been the biggest planet. It's been the largest city on the planet population wise for something like 500 years. It's good and bad. Japan is too much centered on Tokyo, but whatever. It's where I live, so I'm not complaining. It's dense, man. It's 25 million with the suburbs. It's 40. But it's funny. It's super orderly at the same time. It's super crowded, but everybody here kind of keeps themselves together, and for the most part, kind of keeps to themselves and is pretty well behaved, if you will. So even as an American guy, I kind of get by here as long as I sort of go with the flow. I have a kid who's the love of my life. Is my 9-year-old boy, and my wife's Japanese, so we're raising him here as a bilingual, bicultural kid, and we go to California, where I'm from, every chance we can.
Mm-hmm.
But my daily life here just sort of pretty much centers around coming to Shibuya, where I have my office, where I am right now, getting home and, having dinner with my family. It's a pretty straight up family life. But then, when I am at work, I'm meeting my clients. Either I'm talking to them on Skype if they're not in Japan, or even if they are, sometimes they don't always want to travel to my part of Tokyo in Shibuya, where my office is. Anyway, I'm talking to my clients either in face-to-face or on Skype about their MBA application. So my work is basically managing a team, helping coach my clients, and then relaxing and chilling with my son and my wife. So it's not that different than a life anywhere else, I would imagine. It's just that it's, for me, it's still a foreign country, even though I've been here a while. And I like that. As long as I'm not, if I can remember every day to wake up in the morning and remember that I'm in a place that's not my home, then I can enjoy it and feel like I'm constantly discovering new things and looking at the world with fresh eyes.
Nice. Well, I mean, how about like, are you a big sushi eater? I mean, it's because that's you're in Mecca. You're in the Mecca of sushi.
Yeah,
right?
sushi world for sure. Yeah, man, I do. I can't say I eat it every day, but I could. I walk by. I got my favorites. I got a little stand right near our house that I go to for my go-to is just the negi maguro. So it's just a roll with toro, the real fatty tuna, and the sliced scallion, the green onions.
Mm.
And I eat that, every chance I get. I don't go to the real blowout expensive sushi places, but that's the thing about Tokyo. People talk about it being expensive, and of course it could be if you want to, be foolish. But local people here live, really well. You can actually eat an amazing lunch for $5 US. So I don't go to those, I don't go to Ginza sushi places and throw down $500 much, but I definitely can eat good food anytime I want. I mean, I lived in New York when I was in grad school, and I used to joke with my friends that if I could eat Japanese food every day, if I could afford to eat Japanese food every day, I would. And then gotta be careful what you wish for, because bam, here I am, and I'm eating Japanese food every day, like it or not, and I do love it. So it is a good thing.
That's my dream, dude. I love Japanese food. I love sushi. So that's something I would definitely eat every day. And you're actually right. I mean, even in Brazil, you can go to some really expensive restaurants, but you can find some local places on the cheap, and really have a good meal. So sometimes it's just the best option. So, but I do want to do, I mean, if I ever do go to Tokyo, I do want to splurge on one place called, have you ever seen that documentary called Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
Yeah, man. That's the joint.
Yeah. I
It's
gotta
funny.
go there. I gotta go there before I die, man. I mean, that's
I got the scoop, by the way, on how to make a reservation there. Not that it's easy, but my wife saw something on Japanese TV about it or read about it. But basically, though, there's only one way to try to even try to make a reservation there. I can tell you later, or I can tell your listeners right now. Basically, you got to call the place. You got to call the place on the first day of the month. 30 out of 31 days, he doesn't answer his phone. I think he just, I don't know, turns the ringer off or unplugs it. But on the first of the month, he or his staff, whoever it is, answers his phone, and they fill up the whole month on reservations on the first of the month. So they take reservations a month in advance, on the first day of the month. So don't even bother calling if it's not the first of the month, Tokyo time.
Wow, he's going like all Bone Thugs and Harmony there with the with the first of the month. For the listeners out there who didn't get that reference, listen to a Bone Thugs and Harmony song called "First of the Month," and that's kind of where I think it was the 1999 album.
Nice reference, man. That's a good one.
No, it's because I hadn't heard that since high school, man. You're like first of the month, first of the month, and then the song came in my head. I was just like, it's the first of the month. So anyway, going off track here, Vince, why don't you tell our listeners what are your clients like? What are the Japanese students like? Give us a picture of what it's like for a Japanese student trying to get into an American MBA, U.S. top MBA.
Well, there's two types, there's the domestic guys and, types. There's sort of the domestic applicants, and then there's the returnees, which means they've kind of already globalized. But the vast majority are very domestic, and they tend to be older. My business is VincePrep, and I'm also operating underneath a larger company, which is the biggest test prep in Japan, and one of the biggest in Asia, which is called Agos, AGOS. Agos has, I think, last I heard, something like 70% market share for the sponsored applicants. So this is something you really only see in Japan. You see it in Korea as well. Sometimes in the States with like McKinsey, but it's a different deal. So these guys from Japan, it's basically kind of a carrot, or how do you say it? It's a recruiting perk that these companies, the big banks, the so-called trading companies, which are really more like investment companies now, these Mitsubishi, Mitsui, these Sumitomo, these big companies, every year they will choose, and also Nomura in financial services, every year they'll choose maybe 2, 3, 4, up to maybe 10 people, and they'll pay. It's a pretty sweet deal. They'll basically pay your MBA tuition. While you're there, you get your salary, and then you have your guaranteed job when you come back. So it's pretty much a risk-free MBA. And for those guys, that's a great way to go because, it's risk-free. And then on the flip side, when these guys are the ones who go out and do the recruiting. So they'll go to college campuses in the spring, and they'll talk to the juniors or the seniors in college, and they'll be like, "Come work at this company, and you can be just like me. You can get your MBA sponsored by the company." So they definitely use that as recruiting and also as a way to build talent, and to get
sustainability too.
Sustainability, yeah. But to get sponsored, it's like it's hard, people say it's harder to get sponsored than it is to get into Stanford MBA, except 7%. These big companies, Mitsubishi is the biggest employer in Japan. To get sponsored by Mitsubishi Corporation is you're talking like less than 1% quote pass rate. So a lot of my clients are like that. They've worked really, really hard. But as I said before, they do tend to be a little bit older, maybe 29, 30, because they have to really kind of prove themselves at the company long enough. So that, the average applicant might be 27, entering student, maybe 27. These guys are like 29, 30, but it's not a big deal. The schools are aware of that. I keep saying guys, it is mostly men, although if you're a woman, you have a really even better chance because there just aren't many of them in the pipeline. So every once in a while, every year, there's a few Japanese women who get sponsored by these big companies, and they have a very good, they have to have good applications, of course, good scores, but schools are really interested in them because, as all the schools are really trying to get to the 50-50 parity of men and women. The MBA is the last holdout among the grad schools that aren't equal. Law school a long time ago, med school a long time ago had roughly 50-50 men and women, but MBA not yet. So, it's good to be a woman anywhere, but especially in Asia.
Really, that's weird because that really, you just kind of shook one of my I would say my erroneous foundations on Asian culture. I would think women in business, at least in Asia, was even harder for women to really, break through that glass ceiling and really make it big. Because I mean, I've never lived in Asia, but at least what I've seen, from personal experience, from people who I've talked to, it just appeared to be where it was harder for women in Asia, in general.
It is.
To get up,
It definitely is harder for them to be successful and kind of survive that male culture. I'm just saying just to flip it from the admissions office view. If there is a woman who comes through that pipeline who has survived, and can kind of like manage all the politics and kind of quote BS, that they have to deal with, it's kind of very top-down hierarchical culture, where anyway, if they can basically show that they have the ability to navigate in that world and still be successful, for example, round 3 at Harvard Business School, I pretty much say if a guy comes to me with a great score, a great career, and he says, look, I'm going to apply to Harvard round 3, I would try really hard to talk him out of it. However, I've seen women get in third round, so like that's where on the margins it really makes a difference. Now, I'm definitely not saying they have an easy life in the corporate world. I'm just saying they have a great shot. They have a great shot at MBA admissions if they can show that they've kind of navigated that really tricky world. And for them, it can be a huge career changer, as well. Even if they're not sponsored and they can get an MBA, then they could work for a foreign company, for example, and they could be a manager, whereas it's going to be really hard in a traditional company. I may get in trouble for saying these things, but I think anyone would agree with me. It's just, I can get away with saying it because I'm not Japanese, right? These are just my observations.
Right. I mean, you're not like an employee at a huge corporation. You're talking about, things going on within the corporation. So
yeah.
If you want me to, I can cut that out.
No, it's cool. It's cool. It's a fact. It's an observation, and the stats back it up. There's all these publicly available stats about the percentage of women, and on the boards of companies or CEOs. It's not great in the States, but it's pretty shockingly low here. I think it's Japan's the lowest of any of the quote sort of OECD countries, right? Sort of developed countries of the world. Japan's like in last place for that.
Wow.
So it's pretty well known, and I mean even the prime minister talks about it. The people are trying. It's hard to move that needle.
It is, and the initiative has to come from women as well. I mean, there's just not that many women who are who really want to go through all that. Go through all the, how do you say, swim through all the. Swim through all the gunk there to really get there,
Exactly.
What's that movie called now? I just remembered. Shawshank Redemption,
Yeah.
Swimming through the whole river to come out at the end. Swimming through a mile of sewage.
Yeah, that's a great film.
Yeah, it was. It was a great movie. And but yeah, I mean, I think the women in Japan or in Korea or even in China, I think most would not take that initiative. They might just go on doing business on their own. You don't want to, with the whole, I don't know, I don't even want to get into this whole feminism thing, but we'll move on from that. Yeah, it's dangerous ground. I'm going to get in trouble by my wife.
A couple of dudes will get in trouble, yeah.
I'm going to get my wife is going to hear this, and then it's like no more MBA Wire for a couple of months. I'm going to be grounded. What do you think then is the hardest part of the application process for your students?
Cross-cultural perceptions, just like understanding how they're going to be seen. So a lot of my students who are here in Japan are, I don't want to use the word elite, but they've gotten into the best universities, all their lives for the most part. They've kind of been the winners, right? They've done all the right things, passed the test and got into the top school, blah, blah, and got a job at the company. So for them, I'm not going to say their lives have been easy, but sort of the metric or the measurement of success, it's kind of like, and then they get to MBA and they assume that, because they went to the best school and they work at the best company, they're going to get into the quote best MBA program. But it's hard for them to realize that they really have to start from scratch and sell themselves. And, hear the cultures, be humble, and of course you don't, and I'm not saying to get into the top US school, you want to be an arrogant, jerk and brag about yourself. It's not like that, but
No,
confidence. Yeah. You
confident.
can't, so for example, a very, very specific example. So somebody here talks about what, so you say, why MBA? Why do you need this MBA? And here they'll put it in a negative frame. They'll be like, my company's not good at this, or I don't have that skill. And whereas the main thing I always tell them is you got to sell the opportunity, show the upside. It's like, here's a great opportunity that my company has. Here's a great opportunity that I have, and I need to capture that opportunity, so I need a new skill. It's like flipping the story and selling the opportunity as opposed to selling the need. To get sponsored
Right.
by the company, they want to emphasize the threat. We're going to die if we don't do this, and I'm the guy to do it. So to get your boss to pay for your MBA, you definitely want to put it in a sense of crisis, and Japan lacks X and I need Y, and blah blah. Great. So that's a story that got you sponsored, but the story that got you sponsored is not necessarily the story that's going to get you admitted. And that's a hard thing to to sell to somebody, because I can't say it like that. I just have to do it Socratically. I just have to ask questions. I have to get them to discover it for themselves, rather than me I can't give a lecture, because they look at me and they're like, what do you know? Even if whatever, I've been here a long time and they can see my success rate, or, whatever, my past clients, even if a former client of mine knows this person and said, oh, Vince is good, but still on the first meeting, they're going to be very skeptical, because, naturally I didn't come up this way. And they're like, no, but so-and-so told me, so you just got to keep driving that home, that you got to sell your story in a very different way.
Yeah, that's true. You can't just rely on your credentials and on your background. I mean, you said it all. You said it perfectly. You have to start from scratch, and that was a pretty good illustration. I mean, with the guys talking on the negative side, focusing on the negative rather than the positive, bringing in the opportunity and the contributions. That's pretty cool. Wow, that you made that very clear to me, and I can imagine. Most of us Asians, we are somewhat stubborn and hard-headed. We're always skeptical, I think. Suspicious. I don't know if that's the right word. I would say skeptical, but you're always, the first few times until that person really shows that he knows what he's doing, you're kind of always on the, you're on the defense. So I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. Well, how about the GMAT though? I mean, I bet you in Japan, I mean, your GMAT scores are off the hook. I mean, I don't even think GMAT is going to be very big of a problem there.
Oh, it is. No, it is. Yeah, the math is not a problem. A lot of guys here get 49, 50, 51 on the math. But when it comes to the verbal, especially someone who has not experienced life outside Japan, they really struggle. And it used to be 13 years ago when I started doing this, I would tell someone, I can think of it as a specific case. This guy, he took the GMAT once, got a 680, and he kept trying to tell me he needed to take it again. And this is 10 years ago, and I kept saying, no, don't worry, take it once, 680, you're good. And he got into Wharton, which is his dream school. That guy came to me today, I'd be like, yeah, man, I'm sorry, yeah, you need 700. That's a huge change, and it's harder and harder for them to get 700, because it just. People say it, and I think it's true. The test is getting harder. The average score. I mean, there's data for that. Even GMAC itself has data about this. So, for the the company where I work, I'm under this umbrella of Agos, and Agos is a test prep company, and we have 250 GMAT students a year, and the GMAT for them is a struggle, and we don't even really teach the math, frankly, but it's all about the verbal, and it's about the vocabulary. The grammar part they can nail. Sentence correction is sort of, people here excel at that because it's just pattern recognition. But when it comes to reading comprehension or some of that logical stuff, or even integrated reasoning, they really struggle with it. And the message I wish could get out there, and I've been talking to GMAC about this, and they're really trying. I don't know if it's gonna be successful, but I really wish, if I could wish one thing, would be that my clients would have taken the GMAT in college. So a lot of them will do international exchange, like they'll go to the US or something, or go to an English-speaking country while they're in college, right? Mm-hmm. They should take the GMAT right when they get back, when their head's still full of English, that's probably the best their English is going to get, because then they're going to go to work in a domestic company and probably lose their English. So it's like, if there's anyone listening to this, who's still in college, I mean, anywhere, even in Brazil, take the GMAT when you have someone, you may think you're busy now that you're 20, but
It's going to get worse.
It's going to get worse, and the scores last for 5 years. Whether it's GRE or GMAT, doesn't matter, but the score lasts 5 years. So take that test before you graduate, and just keep it in the bank. At worst case, you wasted $250 or whatever the registration fee is.
Mm-hmm.
But the test keeps getting harder, and you're going to get busier. And so, like, if these guys would have done that, man, then all they'd have to do is the TOEFL, and then their application. But TOEFL plus GMAT plus application, sometimes 6 months isn't even enough. That's the one.
It's a full year of prep.
Yeah, or multiple years, right? So I guess that's one I wish people did when it comes to the GMAT. And we keep saying that. I don't know if it'll ever. I mean, GMAT's, trying to get on college campuses and give that message. GMAC, the GMAC, but we'll see. And I know ETS is making a big push there too, to try to get people to take the GRE while they're in college.
Yeah, that's actually a great idea, because students have to do these proficiency tests when they are at their prime, when they're at their prime level of English use. Because when they do come back and they work for 5-6 years at a domestic company, man, all that English that you took back in high school and college, it's gone. And you're actually starting from scratch. I mean, in every aspect. And in Brazil, it's not very different. Many students, we give them an outlook of about 1 year. You have to start preparing at least a year ahead. The average, I would say, is a year and a half. There have been cases of 2 or more years, but those are very few. Yeah, so usually they come in with pretty good English, which is different from Japan, I think, because there's not as many English speakers around. I mean, I'm sure the average Japanese professional may have very little contact with an English-speaking person in comparison to, the average Brazilian professional today. I mean,
I guess that's right. Yeah, I assume that's right. And the data's not too encouraging. Everyone takes English here for 5 or 6 years, but they don't talk.
Right. Right. It's the sage on the stage. It's the sage on the stage format, right? You got the teacher talking up in front, and then the students just listening and doing their homework. Yeah, it's not going to work as well. But yeah, things have to change. I mean, do you feel like even though it's getting harder and harder, I'm pretty sure there's still growth. More and more students are applying for MBAs every year. Are they not?
Not in Japan. The market's growing, but that's because the population's shrinking. On the flip side, though, there is talk. I don't know if it'll ever happen, frankly, but there's talk at the highest levels of government to require the TOEFL for just college entrance. Right now, they use TOEIC, which doesn't have speaking, and companies use TOEIC as well. And there's been a big push to switch to TOEFL, but there's a lot of resistance, because then people would have to teach speaking and listening, which is there's a huge resistance to that. But I'm still hopeful. I'm still optimistic. The mayor of Osaka, who just stepped down, but he was trying really hard to have TOEFL, and the Minister of Education and Culture. So with or without MBA, there may come a time where there becomes a sea change or whatever with younger generations, where the idea of speaking English is not laughed at. Now it's just like this very universal cultural, idea that we don't speak English. We are a monolingual country. And frankly, and I never say this much, and I don't know if I should put this in your podcast, but I think a lot of it also just has to do with, with history. It's like there is a still idea, I think, deep down in some people's minds, that that's kind of the language of the occupiers,
Right.
Right. Back from whereas in Korea, the relationship, the U.S. and Korea and South Korea fought a war alongside each other, right? It wasn't a U.S. against, South Korea, right? They were partners. And so there, I think, this is my assumption. This is a very just naive view, but there, I think language has been embraced. I think statistically, the rate of English spoken among Koreans, even Chinese. But for Japan, there's just this kind of part of it's an island. Part of it could be this historical thing I'm saying, or who knows really. But there is this very deep-seated idea that we are a monoculture, we are a monolinguistic, we are a single language culture. We will never ever. We as one people speak only one language. And man, I mean, until you change that, I mean, no one's saying it should be bilingual, but it's just like, well, yeah, but don't you want to compete globally? You know, and up until now, maybe people felt like they didn't have to because they could just rely on the domestic market. But this is the fastest shrinking population in the history of the planet, as far as anyone's ever tracked.
That's deep, man.
Because they don't allow immigration. You know, it's like the U.S. would, and I don't, maybe Brazil as well, but I know U.S. and Europe would be shrinking too if they didn't allow immigrants. I mean, Japan does basically, as a rule, really almost immigration rates here are incredibly low. And without immigration, this place is just shrinking fast. I mean, fast. So no, the MBA is not a growing market here. Nothing's a growing market here except like healthcare.
Right, healthcare.
You know?
Yeah, for older folk. Yeah,
elder care. Yeah, for a little while, it's a growing market, but you know, so there's this deep-seated resistance to the English language. Or really any language, frankly. It could be the French language. Any language. It's like there's this very strict idea of a cultural identity that's almost a reaction against any other outside influence, which on some ways makes this place really beautiful and pure and whatever, and kind of the culture here is very strong. But on the other hand, it's a little too strong because they're kind of hurting themselves by just refusing to even embrace the concept of using a language to get ahead in life.
Wow, that's deep,
you know,
man. Very deep.
That's how I see it.
Very deep conversation. But yeah, I get what you're saying, and I think it has a lot to do with, I mean, because the Japanese of the Asian cultures, the Japanese are I would say are the most faithful to their roots, to their traditions. You know, it's in a sense like, I mean, if you go all the way back even to just like the depictions of the samurai, you know, when the Western world was already using firearms, you know, the Japanese still had the samurai who still used the sword, and it kind of goes all the way back there. They're very traditional. They're very accustomed to doing the things the way they've done it their entire lives. So it's very hard for them to change, you know, and change is not very welcome in Japan, right?
No. And like you said, that's a beautiful thing. You know, it can be a very beautiful thing. It can also be, you know, paralyzing. Depends on how you look at it. But modern Japan is founded on this idea of modern technology, traditional ideas, and that's very deep. Man, I don't see that changing anytime soon. But I know, maybe it's just because I have a kid, but I do notice among parents and young kids that, I mean, parents these days, I think there is finally a shift where a lot of parents now are like, look, man, I want my young kid to know different languages so they will have opportunity. I think now among young people and young parents, I sense that it's changing. Maybe it's just Tokyo. This is the only place I really, you know, spend much time. But I don't know, out in the countryside if that's true. But here I do notice with younger generations where my son's age and, you know, even younger, where there's more kids taking English and there's more like, you know, English lessons being taught, and the government is trying. So I shouldn't make it sound like it's all hopeless, you know?
Right. I mean, it's just like a general view. I mean, things are going, but the change is not being made as fast as it could be, maybe.
Yeah. Or is it maybe as it needs to be in terms of, you know, staying ahead with global competition, and you know, Asia's really caught up to Japan, right? Japan was a leader in the 60s and 70s, being really one of the only quote developed countries, but Korea's sure come up fast, and you know, now even Vietnam, you know, other countries in Southeast Asia are advancing, developing, you know, getting infrastructure. So Japan better do something, you know, because you can't. They got all these advantages, but everyone's really, you know, aggressively trying to catch up with them. So
yeah, I mean,
I hope people here can keep their roots, but also embrace a little more open idea.
Yeah, change is necessary, especially in you know, an ever globalizing world that we live in today. I mean, it's It's ridiculous how fast the world is getting so small. Every month that goes by, some new app or some new product is connecting us even closer together. And it's just, it's hard to keep up with. And, if you latch on to things that you've been used to and don't embrace this kind of change, and which is what the schools are looking for too, right? MBAs are looking for people who can work well with diversity.
Yeah.
And, if you have a deeply rooted traditionalistic view of, things have to be a certain way, black and white, when the world is turning ever more grayish, that's a skill that you need to develop in order to get accepted into a better school.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, get like schools with case studies where they actually put you in with, people from all different countries. I mean, I think it's essential as a culture to start changing like that. And I don't know much about Tokyo, but from what you've been telling me, it sounds like you do have there is some work to be done. There are people who are spearheading this this movement, and then you also have those who are completely against it. And it's just a matter of time will tell, maybe. Or some cataclysmic event. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely sensed a change after that big earthquake and tsunami and the nuclear thing in 2011. I think that was a wake-up call.
Yeah, dude. Speaking of which, there was a tremor like last week, right there.
Yeah, it was big, but I was in my office. I felt it. My building was rocking, but there wasn't a lot of damage. It was far out in the ocean, and there wasn't a tsunami because it was too deep. But yeah, it was real, and apparently people felt it in even like in India and Nepal. It was apparently something. It was a major plate movement that happened, and a kind of a rare shift. So yeah, I certainly felt that one. But no, the worst thing that happened where the trains were really messed up for a couple hours, and but yeah, all things considered, I was like, wow, because it lasted a good long while. And yeah, it was like 7.8, I guess they said. But it was unique in that it was way off the coast and way deep in the ocean. And there was
right, so you guys just got
we just rocking and rolling for a while. Yeah, it was about a good minute where my building. So I'm up on the 9th floor, up on a hill, and it's a modern building. So the building could handle it, but things were really swaying. So they came in yesterday because some of the doors stopped like working, because the thing shifted a bit. So some of the doors wouldn't close and stuff.
Right, because of the sensors and stuff. They were misaligned.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the things were. But yeah, that was. People were worried about us, but we're cool. It was big. It was a lot of movement, but not a lot of damage.
Wow, no. I do not miss earthquakes, man. I grew up in California, and I've had my share of. I think the worst I've actually felt was almost a 7 on the Richter scale.
There were some big ones, in LA back in the day.
Yeah, Northridge, the Northridge quakes, yeah.
Yep. Oh. So you were there for that?
Yes, we were there. We were living in Northridge. That was huge. Yeah, we were living
that was huge.
A little bit further away, but we felt it. Yeah, it was huge. I mean, I do not miss earthquakes. People.
So Brazil doesn't get them somewhere?
We don't have earthquakes here. Yeah.
Got it. It's not part of the.
It's not. I mean, here it's all about. I'd say there's no natural disasters. I mean, very few. I mean, maybe some excess rain once in a while, and you get flooding. But yeah, what kills us is, I'd say, the government, taxes, corruption,
man-made,
and the thieves. Yeah. They're all man-made. I'm not afraid to say it, but it's just a hassle. Every year, there's sort of a morbid joke that people do, and I think it was yesterday was the day. I think that was today is the day where everyone says, everything we make from today on out to the end of the year is ours, because everything we've made till yesterday in 2015 has gone to the government.
Wow.
Taxes.
Wow.
Yeah, but that's how it is.
So the first 5 months is just is taken. So
yep.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, so who needs earthquakes when you have inflation, inflation and taxes, man. But that's why, I mean, in Brazil at least, there's just a huge. I mean, there's just every year I think more and more students are trying to get out of here. Some of them do want to come back after their MBAs, but a lot of them just want to get out and have a different opportunity. Because things here have not been the greatest, and it just seems like it's getting worse here as far as freedom and politically, and it's been crazy. It's been crazy. And for us, at least in the consulting business, it's been good, which makes it harder for us to leave, because I'm concerned about my kids' safety. But then again, where can I go to make enough to make sure that my family is having living a pretty good, comfortable life. And it's tough situation, but, just writing it out and seeing where this growth leads us.
It's funny
So
that
I guess
in the last year, I've had a few Japanese clients who are focused on Brazil, in terms of either their experience and or their goals.
Really?
In fact, I just met a guy. This is maybe not for your podcast, but I'll hook you up with him later. He's going to be moving there pretty soon. His company's sending him down there to manage something. His company's made some investments, so he's going to be moving to Sao Paulo pretty soon. And he got into MBA, but his company was like, "No, we're not going to." He got into MBA, but instead they're like, "No, we need you to go to Brazil for a couple of years." So he may reapply later. He got into Chicago Executive MBA, but in the end, the company was like, "No, we need you to go down to Sao Paulo and take care of whatever, this joint venture, I think." So he'll be moving down there soon. He's a cool guy. And then another guy had already been down there for a couple of years. And his company's, I think, one of the biggest investors. Foreign investors, among Japanese. This company's made a lot of investments, and he was doing food business, like infrastructure or logistics, delivery. Originally, it was a coffee, of course, coffee related, I think, for export from Brazil. But now I think he's talking about doing, like a institutional food service type business for Brazil, like for, whether it's like senior citizens or schools or even companies where they've got like healthy meals and like delivery and stuff. He's got this whole vision for healthy food in Brazil. That was like his goal. He's going to Harvard Business School on that goal. Like that was his thing, and that's his passion. He speaks Portuguese. He plays music. Plays Portuguese music. That's like his big passion is Brazil. It's like cool. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Well, I mean, best of luck to him, because it sounds like a huge endeavor he's gonna embark on right now when he comes to Sao Paulo. So that's a lot of work, man. Wow.
Yeah, sounds like it. I mean, he's got his company behind him, and if he was just one dude, I think that'd be pretty tough,
Yeah.
But apparently his company's already made some investments, so I guess they want to they want to bring it to the next level.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely. Definitely want to get in touch and, just maybe interview him for his experience at Harvard too, man. That would be cool.
Cool. I'll link you up with both these guys. The one guy's coming to Sao Paulo soon to live, and then the other guy will be at business school for a couple of years, but his heart's in Brazil, so.
Sounds good, man. I'm just taking a look at your website here while we're talking. And by the way, listeners, if you want to check out Vince's website, it is www.vinceprep.com, VincePrep.com. And here, there's an article that says, prepare for interviews using Vince's mirror method. What is this mirror method? Can you explain that to us?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. So that's how I was trained as an actor back in college.
Wait a minute, you were an actor. Okay, we'll get to that story after. Go on.
Yeah. So when I was taking theater classes with she was like kind of one of my biggest mentors, this woman named Patricia, and she taught improv she created the improvisation program at Stanford, and she also taught just straight up regular acting too, not only improv. And then when I was doing she had this 1 year-long intensive acting seminar, basically. It was a whole year long, and that's how she taught us, and me in particular, to prepare for roles. I have a pretty intense look. I'm not too tall. I never got the romantic lead. I was always like the character actor.
Okay.
So one time I had a friend was directing a play, and she cast me as 3 different people. I would never at the same time, obviously, but I had to come and go from the stage and completely change my face, my voice.
Your wardrobe.
And so she's but actually it was a minimalistic play. So it was the costumes were really, really minimal. It was just change one prop, or, take off, put on a sash, or put on a scarf or something, but I had to basically convey it with my body and my face and my voice rather than, a costume or makeup, because it was a really simple play. Right. Anyway, so Patricia told me to just basically stand in front of the mirror and find the voice, find the way this character looks, or find his body position. So you could basically, as a trigger, almost momentarily change between different personalities, if you will. So when I started doing this MBA work, that kind of struck me that way of just getting instant feedback. People like to do audio recordings, and that's all good. And even these days it's so easy to make a video of yourself. But the problem with that is you get sort of caught up in the technology, or you kind of obsess about the wrong things. The worst way to prepare for an interview is by writing, and that's what a lot of my clients do. They're like, "Will you check my script?"
Yeah.
And I'll be like, "No, I don't want you writing a script for your interview. You've been writing essays for 3, 4, 5, 6 months. Now you got to talk. Especially here in Asia, where people like to hide behind. There's just so Japan in particular, right? We talked about there's so much resistance to doing things that you're not good at, and speaking. So I've been like, no, don't memorize the script. Use bullet points.
Yes.
So use note cards and bullet points and keywords, and then when you practice those, sit down and actually look at yourself talking, because it trains your eye contact. It'll keep you from, reading something, and most importantly, you'll notice how you look, and you smile more often, and make better eye contact. Because as you know, a lot of communication is nonverbal. So even if your English isn't great, it's not going to get better in 3 weeks. A month, even, or 2 days especially. But the point is just to basically kind of almost sort of hypnotize yourself into feeling confident or looking confident. The school will take you if they feel that you have, if you're a confident communicator, even if you don't speak perfectly. So getting away from this idea that you shouldn't make, it's not about saying something perfect and having no mistakes. It's rather about the emotion behind the words. The words themselves can be really simple, and far from perfect, as long as the passion is there and the expression is clear, and that you look like you're not in pain while you're talking, So the mirror gives you that in an immediate feedback way. So that's the mirror method in a long answer to your question.
Nice. The mirror method. Yeah, tap into your inner alter ego and get it, get that, how do you say, wear the part, right? Get into characters. That's how they said it in drama class.
Yeah.
Get into character, right?
Yeah. And, most of my clients have never done any acting, so to them that doesn't resonate, but they do get the concept of just simply, they know that eye contact and facial expressions are important, and body language too. So at least they get that part. And then if they have done any acting or they've done public speaking, it's a lot easier to sell them on the concept of it. But it's one of my favorite things to do, or to talk about, or to share. Nice.
Yeah, I mean, we for our listeners out there, Vince and I and AJ, we're planning on doing a interview prep episode, where all three of us kind of discuss our own personal takes on maybe 6 or 7 of the questions that most schools ask, and I'm very excited for that episode. To be able to talk about things like the mirror method and other little things that you can do to optimize your chances of having a great interview, even though your English may be limited. So, and I think you're right on. It's not about if you're speaking perfect English or not. It's about being able to communicate effectively and being able to show that you're confident. So that's awesome. I like that. I like that, and I can't wait for that for that episode. It's gonna. I'm not sure when we're gonna air it, but we are going to record it in a few weeks, so it's still a ways.
Cool. Anytime.
Yeah.
Anytime.
That.
AJ's great. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
You guys were awesome in doing the karaoke and stuff. That was awesome.
At the AGAC. Yeah, that was actually pretty cool, and that was fun. I enjoy singing. We actually talk about karaoke in our episode. We're gonna launch tomorrow. So if you're gonna listen, if you want to take a listen to our interview, Vince, you're welcome to. You'll see it all over the social media pages and stuff. But speaking of AGAC. While we were there, when we were doing the panels, one of the things that I noticed, I wanted to ask you before. I wanted to ask you, what would you change about the admissions process? I mean, that's just out of curiosity. I ask random people this just because I want to see, you guys have been in this industry for more than 10 years plus. I've only been doing this for 4 years. So, getting someone's perception of how the admissions process has changed over the years, what would you say is like, the next big step? I mean, what would be amazing if they either added or took away from the application process?
Well, sticking just with the theme of interviews, I would say if I could wave a magic wand, I would get rid of the alumni interview, or at least maybe not totally get rid of it. I know why the schools say they do it. They say they do it to keep their alumni engaged, and that's wonderful. I might argue there's a better way to engage your alumni, but fine. If school A or B or C, wants their alumni around the world to meet the applicants, it can have a positive. It's good for networking, and it helps sell the school. On the other hand, I don't think it's consistent or fair or transparent. I think it creates a lot of anxiety and stress, and there's just every year there's just so many horror stories, and I don't hear bad stories about admissions office interviews, and I hear lots of bad stories about alumni interviews. So fine if you want to keep them, but on top of those, and I know it's a matter of resources, but I wish every school in this. I don't think everybody should go to Harvard Business School. I don't think it's right for everybody, but I do like the way they do their admissions interviews, where they fly. It's expensive. They fly their professional staff around the world. They do hubs. They'll do hub cities, and you can actually talk to the decision maker. The one who interviews you is the one who's in charge of that region. So if you're doing it in Paris, you're doing it in Sao Paulo, that person is basically the kind of regional head. So she's the one, or he's the one who has the almost final, nearly final decision-making authority for, or she kind of has her pool of people, and then of course they all get read at the higher level by the the overall director. But my point is, I just think that's a great way to do it because it's consistent. One person is seeing all the people from their perspective. They know who they're admitting, and also it gives you, it's just transparent and fair, as opposed to these alumni interviews, which could be 30 minutes long or 2 hours long. They could be in English, or they're supposed to be. They might not be in English. There's all kinds of awkwardness that happens. Awkwardness, inconsistency, and frankly, I don't know, if I were the school, how much weight I would put on those things. So it just seems like a whole big exercise for not much benefit. It just creates so much anxiety. I wish they could all do it, even these days with Skype or Google Hangout or whatever. Just interview candidates, have the admissions office do it. I just think it's a much more fair, transparent, consistent, predictable in a way, or at least predictably unpredictable. Right? You don't know what they're going to ask you exactly, but you do know who your interviewer will be, and you do know exactly what they're trying to find out. I've had clients get asked for jobs during or after the interview, like the same industry, where the guy's like, oh, by the way, are you hiring? I mean, that's incredibly awkward, right? Because this guy supposedly has power over you because he's going to write your report. On the other hand, he wants to work where you're working. And then it's kind of an awkward exchange of favors, right? You're like, well, yeah, let me check if our HR is looking for anybody. And then, it's just that's just strange, Makes the school look bad. The school's doing it to make their alumni excited and to make the school look good. But more often than not, sometimes the school ends up looking really bad. Because weird things happen, and alumni do this for their own reasons. I just think they should stop it.
Yeah. I mean, you want to get people to be as impartial as possible, especially not allowing personal filters get in the way, personal and professional filters get in the way of someone's judgment. So true. That's true. Because I mean, I think, wow, you know what? That gave me another idea. I think we should do we can do a future episode of horror stories, interview horror stories.
Totally.
That would be cool. We just tell, the stories that we've heard from students and without disclosing nor the school or the student, but just, I think that would be interesting. We'll get back to that.
Totally.
But you are absolutely right. I mean, it's something, there needs to be some sort of a consistency. And I have no idea either how much weight they do put on the opinion of the alumni. But, I know that there are some schools who do a good job, with that. If you compare, like the success stories with the horror stories, I think the success stories with, with the costs, it all outweighs the horror stories. You get one or, you get a few cases every year, but it's still, I think the schools may be still satisfied with the student body that comes in, filtered through
exactly. Yeah, they must be satisfied. Otherwise, they would change it, right? It must be, for them, it must be, acceptable.
Yeah.
It's working for them. I just don't know if it's working for the applicants.
Yeah, because one of the things I always tell students is you just want the guy to like you, man. Because I mean that's the biggest thing I think for the schools. I mean, if they're sending out an alumni, if the alumnus can't get along with the applicant or doesn't really feel right, doesn't have the right vibe, I don't know. Maybe it's again. Then we go into that gray area. What criteria are we using? Don't you want diversity, or do you want people who are just buddies, coming into school? It's a very complicated topic you touched there, Mr. Vince. It is, man. We can go on hours, but yeah, awesome. I agree with you. If there was something in the admissions process I would like to change, it would be for a better interview process. But it's still, despite its flaws, it is one of my favorite parts of the entire application process.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets into it. So we need to start wrapping up because I'm taking way too much of your time here, Vince. But before we wrap up, I would like for you to tell our students, our listeners here, give us some piece of advice, some how do you say, some professional advice here, just to get these guys motivated through their application push.
I would say, when it comes to the investment in your career, get the perspective of recruiters, which I'm always really clear with my clients that I'm not a licensed career coach, or even I certainly don't do executive search or placement. But as you're talking to as you're doing your informational interviews with all these alumni and current students, using your network, in your home market, wherever you are, there's probably some shady guys that do headhunting, executive search, and there must be at least one or two that are reputable firms. And just before you spend all this time and money, go talk to them and figure out what are the jobs that are really out there, what are the values of these various degrees. Keep challenging your assumptions and get perspectives from lots of different stakeholders, not just the alumni and current students and any professionals that you might hire, but also the actual career search people. They'll tell you what's really going on the ground right now, so that you make a really informed choice. It's not like being a college kid, or a high school kid, where you just want to get into the best college you can and you don't really know what you're trying to do and you're not really supposed to when you're 18. But, if you're going to quit your job and invest all this time, you should really know what the job market is right now, and what doors may or may not open to you So, when it comes to just make a wise career investment, I guess I'd say. Maybe that's obvious, but that's something I say a lot because there's a lot of misinformation out there. I got to go to Harvard Business School. I mean, there's a lot of people pay too much attention to rankings and all this and that, but actually really figure out what are the real opportunities that you're trying to get. The more you know about that, you can almost never know too much about that, I guess I would say.
Yeah.
And that's
True.
not really online, right? You got to talk to people about that.
True. Vince, thank you so much for that insight and that advice. Yeah, you can't find that online. You students, listeners, citizens, you would actually have to pay someone to hear what you just heard. So, but you heard it for free here on the MBA Wire. So we can thank VincePrep for that. That was awesome, man.
Right on, dude.
Yeah, right on. Vince, thank you so much for taking such a huge chunk of your time out here to give us this interview and this conversation. And we will be hearing from you again very soon. But for now, man, that was awesome. Thank you very much.
Right on. Have a good one. Looking forward to it. My pleasure.
All right, folks. Well, that's it for today's episode of the MBA Wire. I will catch you next time. This is Mateo Chang signing off.
Thanks for tuning into the MBA Wire. Would you like to know more? Visit us online at thembawire.com today and leave your questions and feedback. While you're there, sign up for an exclusive free audio series to help you strengthen your MBA interview. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the MBA Wire.